Today's topic, 9 medical malpractice questions that every physician should know. Now, this is a topic that you might not expect to hear from a financial advisor, but when you specialize in physicians, you can imagine malpractice questions come up quite a bit. Now, I'll put my little asterisk here, my disclaimer, I am not an attorney. You should trust your attorney and your medical malpractice attorney in particular with all the specifics. But I wanted to write our first blog post in particular for medical malpractice based on some of the questions that we have seen most commonly over the past 10 years or so. So while this will be higher level, I hope it does do a great job addressing some of the main questions maybe you have had, or maybe you just never asked, or maybe you never thought of. So the main takeaways today are to answer these 9 questions, to give you some more specifics about medical malpractice, kind of give you our tidbits on what we see, what we think has worked, what things you should maybe be aware of. And again, the main thing is always confirming, one, what, especially in academic medicine, you're kind of provided that policy. What policy do you have in place? If you're in private practice, when's the last time you reviewed your policy? When's the last time you just did a checkup? So today we answer 9 extremely popular medical malpractice questions that we have seen for about the past 10 years now. And we give you good answers, both the YouTube video and the blog post. So stay tuned. That is all coming up next. All right, number 1. Let's keep it simple here. What is medical malpractice? Now, as a physician, you probably, I hope you know the answer to this. I'll kind of give you the actual line that we listed, right? Medical malpractice occurs when a doctor or medical professional causes injury or death to a patient due to negligence or omission. I hope you never hear the term as medical malpractice besides in this context, or maybe when you're just renewing your policy. But medical malpractice claims are not uncommon. Now, I will say one thing that we do discuss with a lot of our physicians is over the limit medical malpractice lawsuits that you lose are much more uncommon. It does not mean that it doesn't mean you should always accept that. You need to always be playing defense here. It's like all insurance, right? I hope you never need it. But if you do, you're going to be thankful that you had it. And I usually plug in my joke here, and when we're speaking again to different hospitals, different residence programs, fellowships, the quickest way to lose half your assets will not be from a medical malpractice lawsuit. It will be divorce from a spouse. So invest more heavily in date nights and loving your spouse when it comes to asset protection. Usually the 2 biggest questions we get are asset protection, medical malpractice, and I try to actually bring it back more to human terms. Divorce, unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, fortunately in the sense that we're not seeing a ton of medical malpractice suits. Unfortunately, we don't want to see divorce rates either. So understanding what medical malpractice is, I think you probably understand that context there, but just adding some more notes on what it could mean, but also where we actually think you probably have a better opportunity for asset protection. So high-level overview, that's what medical malpractice is. Let's hit question number 2. All right, number 2 is, how does a medical malpractice lawsuit work? This one I will actually read from the actual blog post as well. This is a more common question. Usually our physicians are asking this more in the idea of like, hey, I don't even know what the steps are. What does it mean? So this one has come up quite a few times. So usually we say, first, you're going to meet with an attorney. You're going to consult with a medical expert. You're going to file a case. You're going to conduct an investigation. Settle out of court is actually more common, or go to trial. Those are usually the main steps you see here. And the first few steps there are more or less referring to the individual making the lawsuit. You wouldn't actually know this is probably happening until usually step 3, which is file a case. But that is how a medical malpractice lawsuit would work if you ever have to go through this side of it. Again, hopefully you never do. Number 3, why do patients sue doctors? This can have a lot of different answers. So let me give you most common, least common specialties on why they're being sued. This is actually from a great law firm called Miller and Wagner. So again, you will see my eyes bounce around a little bit more here. I just want to give you the answers here. So who is most likely to be sued? So when you look through medical malpractice, where are the most highly common or most common specialties being sued? Okay, neurosurgeons, cardiovascular surgeons, general surgeons, OBGYNs. Those are your, was that 4, right? 4 most common. 4 most common. Who are least likely to be sued? So also let's kind of look at who's not most likely going to get this type of lawsuit. Psychiatrist, pediatricians, family general practice. 3 specialties, not very common on medical malpractice suits. So I think that's probably a better way to answer why do patients sue doctors. And then if you're in those specialty, you probably know the reasons or where you might see some hiccups more than others. So let's actually use that as our main answer for number 3. Number 4, how can doctors prevent malpractice? You know those systems that your hospital put in place that you sometimes say these are annoying and time consuming? Likely it's because of medical malpractice. So the main few that we listed here, continually developing your skills and knowledge. Kind of makes sense, right? Confer with other doctors and specialists. So not just saying, hey, I know everything, I'm going to do everything here. Bring in other specialties. Get a second opinion when you're looking at certain things. Pay attention to the details. Always have adequate support. These should make a lot more sense to you than they do to me since I'm not the one in the surgery room here. Avoid rushing and overwork. I know a few of you just chuckled when you heard overwork, but things that, your brain doesn't work that well on a 36-hour shift, and then the most intense surgery of your life comes in at hour 36. So work-life balance, important here. Do no harm. I know you hear that more than ever in your training, but also in your time as a physician. But those are the most common ways to avoid medical malpractice. And I know what you're saying, financial planner guy, thanks for all this breaking news. I'm just giving you the context on what we know, but also when we talk to our clients, again, working with physicians for so long, these are just little things that we talk about, and maybe not in particular to medical malpractice, but just some of the steps and the checks and balances that are in place. So that is the best way to avoid medical malpractice. Number 5, how can doctors avoid litigation? Truthfully, I feel like this one was answered in number 4, but we do add some more context in the blog post. And it's tough, right? Because it's not always just from this simple error. I kind of use the hypothetical, hey, we left a sponge inside. We have seen medical malpractice for individuals that felt, neglected or unseen, or they weren't catered to. Now, again, does it get to a medical malpractice suit that you could lose, let alone go over the limits? I would say usually we don't see that, at least when you kind of look through the data. But has there been cases? Of course, right? There's always some weird lawsuit that's going to catch you off guard. So more or less, I would take number 4 and plug them in here to number 5 on how to avoid litigation. Follow the systems, document. I would say it's similar to us in the financial industry in the idea of, we document everything. Write down your system. Have a system in place. Why did you do this? Okay, you noted this. Why did you do this? You met with this individual. Okay, you didn't use this individual. You brought in this specialist. Document everything. Take your time. But again, for number 5, I'd say, number 5's answer is good, but also I'd even say number 4 probably even adds more context there. All right, number 6, how can you protect your personal assets? Now, this is getting closer to my wheelhouse. And even with that said, there are attorneys that specialize in asset protection. I can give you a solid foundation to work with, but there's going to hit a point in your life, and also depending on what state you live in, where asset protection may come in even much sooner. Again, hopefully you never need this, but I'd rather have you playing pretty solid defense as opposed to getting caught and not having any defense in place. So, high-level overview here. Having good umbrella insurance is vital. Now, always put in this disclaimer because I'm actually almost amazed by how many physicians, our clients, one-time plan builds, you name it, sometimes think that an umbrella insurance actually protects their assets even from medical malpractice. That is not the case. Not the case. Umbrella insurance provides extra liability for you just being the average Joe or Jane walking down the street. So again, homeowners insurance, car insurance are the main protections there, but good asset protection. For the most part, this is where your retirement plans come into play. So not only do we try to keep most of our clients' assets in the retirement plan because it's great for backdoor Roth IRAs, but it also usually adds pretty solid, I wouldn't even say pretty solid, it adds the best form of asset protection because it has ERISA in there. ERISA really protects those assets strong. Now, the one thing I always note here again, solo 401ks, while they are a retirement plan, are not protected by ERISA if it's just you in the plan. So also be aware of that. That's another common theme that we see missed a lot. Solo 401ks can have good asset protection through your state though, so check the state. Same thing with IRAs and Roth IRAs. Every state's a little bit different, but most, not all, states do provide really good asset protection for your IRAs, Roth IRAs. Outside of that, you got to look at your state's rules for pensions and annuities, life insurance death benefits, life insurance cash value, the equity in your home. Some states provide a lot more protection than the equity of your home. This is an important conversation, right? When you have that question that comes in, should I actually pay down my debt sooner or pay down or put more into my taxable investment account? There is a part of asset protection that can come into that conversation depending on where you live. So keep that in mind as well. And then once you go through that and you say, wow, we got a huge taxable account. Well, another easy fix for the taxable account, does your state allow tenants by the entirety? If it does, fantastic free asset protection for you and your spouse on that account. If the state does not allow it and they only allow, most commonly joint with rights of survivorship, it's worth a conversation here to maybe see if some form of planning can be helpful here. Sometimes we'll even see spouses separate. So physician assets are in one taxable account, other, say, non-physician or just another physician are in their own taxable account. This can add some complication to it. Do I think it's worth it? Depends, usually not, but also a way to at least try to separate those assets in the example of a state that's not allowed joints with, tenants by the entirety. So asset protection is vital here, but you need to understand what's protected. And usually this is going to come back to your state rules if it's outside of your employer retirement plan, which is protected by ERISA, which for all intents and purposes, consider ERISA the gold standard for asset protection. Number 7, how much medical malpractice coverage do you need? Well, here again is really going to pertain to your specialty. And also, if you're in academic medicine, usually they just kind of give you the plan, right? And usually what we'll see is 1 and 3. So 1 million, 3 million. What that means is 1 million per occurrence, 3 million total. So I call it a 1-3 split. That's the most common form of medical malpractice. More or less, you see that as like the base standard for a lot of academic medicine. Your private practice, depending on the specialty, might actually provide a little bit more. You can always go add more if you want to. Now, medical malpractice can be expensive, especially based on your specialty. There's another thing that we did not get into too much detail here, but tail coverage. Tail coverage is vital. And one of the things that we actually, not only do we look for when reviewing physician contracts, but we know the attorneys that help our clients review those physician contracts also pay a large amount of attention to. Sorry for the tongue tie there. But tail coverage can also add a large expense to it because it's essentially provide insurance for all past procedures, all past medical advice that was provided. So this one can vary. Again, on a high level overview, most common we see 1-3, 1 million per occurrence, 3 million total, but it really depends on your specialty. Where coming back to neurosurgeons, right? 20% of all medical malpractice claims are towards neurosurgeons. Also dealing with the brain, right? Probably not as simple as I don't even have a good example. I'll default to you guys for a good example, but some serious items going on there, limits could be higher, right? So just keep an eye on this, know your specialty. There's also good research out there where you can find through, but also talk to your peers, see what's going on out there. So this number can vary. 1-3 is probably the most common, but doesn't mean that it's meant for you or your specialty, depending on where you sit from. This is my specialty. All right, number 8, where should you get medical malpractice? This isn't something that you just bundle with your home and auto, but there are some big providers out there. So the ones that we actually listed were the Doctors Company, Medical Protective, also known as MedPro, Berkshire Hathaway Company. So very recognizable name. You might even have your disability through Berkshire Hathaway. Their disability side is called Guardian. Healthcare Provider Service Organization, Medical Liberty Mutual, Physicians, Reciprocal Insurance, State Volunteer Mutual Insurance Company. Those are some of the ones that we have seen. Usually we see those more or less because of our clients in private practice where we just kind of have everything on file. Main thing to look for is, one, make sure they have a reputable name, but make sure they're financially strong too. Look up their actual ratings through A&M Best. you want to really see an A or better, ideally A plus or A plus plus. So those are very common places to get it. Again, academic medicine, it might be provided for you. Even in private practice, they might say, hey, we buy all of our coverage through X company. Here's what it is. Here's our average limits. You can add your own. But those are some common companies. I would assume if you're watching this video, there's a high probability that you're using one of those insurance companies. Maybe, again, academic medicine, because there's so many physicians, you might find one that's not listed there, but because they have so many physicians, they're just getting really good details. One disclosure here, I should say one of my pro tips. If you are doing moonlighting or extra 1099 work, read your medical malpractice rules. It might say it excludes anything outside of this hospital or this organization, or it only covers this. That is one hiccup we see quite a bit. Luckily, we've never seen that go wrong on a client, but we have seen when we had an attorney read through it that it wasn't covering their actual extra work outside of that hospital. So just always be aware of what does that policy actually cover, where does it cover it. You might have to go get another policy to cover that extra work. Just keep an eye on those things. Always be aware of all the moving parts with your medical malpractice. And there you have it. Those are the 9 most common medical malpractice questions that we see from our clients, but also I just thought were really good questions to include on items that maybe you haven't thought through, or maybe you thought through at a high level but wanted more detail. But as I said at the start, I hope you never have to worry about this, right? I hope you have good coverage in place, but you never have to actually read the fine print because of a lawsuit, right? You should always read the fine print and know what's going on, or hire a good attorney to do that. But with that, it's not very common to have an over-the-limit medical malpractice lawsuit where it can actually then affect your personal assets. But just because I say that and data can help us, you should still always play good defense, understand the moving parts, have good asset protection already in place behind the scenes. And that is a pretty good strategy for medical malpractice. And again, I know I joke about this on numerous blog posts. If you ever heard me speak as well, I love this joke. But in all seriousness, the odds of you losing half your assets to a medical malpractice lawsuit are extremely slim. Losing half your assets to a divorce, much, much more common. A divorce rate, it was trending right around 50%. I think it went down a little bit. Good thing. Hopefully that keeps coming down. But that is a much more common way to lose half your assets. So after you make sure you have good medical malpractice in place, you take some time to read through the policy, talk to your attorney. After that, take your spouse or significant other out to dinner, have a date night, whatever makes you guys happy, go have some fun. So, as always, thanks for tuning in. I hope these questions were helpful to give you some more context on medical malpractice. Again, hope you never need this policy, but good defense is a good offense. As always, thanks for tuning in. If you have not subscribed, usually I forget this part. If you have not subscribed, subscribe. Click the little bell icon. You'll get notifications every time that we send a new video live. You can also like this video, which also helps us out. As I said, usually I forget those so you can tell that I am not putting too many YouTube sales pitches in here. But as always, thanks for tuning in, and I will catch you on the next video.